Good morning. Welcome to this morning's Dharma School service. We're having a bit of, it seems like every Sunday we have technological challenges, but we are up to it and we have met the challenge and hopefully things will go a little smoother. I want to thank Michiko Inanaga who is our guest speaker this morning, and we'll hear from her in a little bit. But as we begin this morning's service, we'll start with Sambujo, followed by the reading of Junidai. So if you please join us in reading Junidai. おひざ上女性 Again, once again, good morning. I know we're running a little late, but let's join in the reading of Golden Chain. Okay, we please join in Gassho. I am a link in Amida's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I will keep my link bright and strong. I will be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will think pure and beautiful thoughts, say pure and beautiful words, and do pure and beautiful deeds. May every link in Amida's golden chain of love be bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much for being here for this morning's Dharma School service. It's a service that we have set aside to remember Eshinni and Kakushinni. Eshinni was Shinnan's wife, and Kakushinni was their youngest daughter. We have with us this morning, joining us for this special service, Michiko Inanaga, who has been a member of the Orange County Buddhist Temple and has served in various capacities in leadership at Orange County, as well as now in the BCA with our Endowment Foundation, the group that coordinates the fundraising development for Endowment, Buddhist Churches of America, and the IBS. So we have had an opportunity of working together for a few years now, and I wanted this opportunity for Michiko to come and join us for this morning's service. I should also mention that she is daughter to Miyaji Sensei and brother to Reverend Takashi Miyaji, who is the minister of the Southern Alameda Buddhist Temple. Thank you, Michiko, for joining us this morning. We look forward to your message. And don't feel constrained by the time, because we are running late. If we run past 10 o'clock a little bit, we'll still be fine. So please don't feel that you need to rush through your message because we are running late. Again, thank you for joining us this morning, Michiko Inanaga.
Please join me in Gassho. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to see you today. Thank you, Reverend Sakamoto, for inviting me and Mikame Sensei. It's an honor to be here at the San Jose Betsuin as we remember Eshinni and Kakushinni. Like Kakushinni, I too am the daughter of a reverend, actually two reverends, Nobuo and Yoshiko Miyaji. I really wish I could honor my father the same way she did, but my family has been in Jodo Shinshu Buddhism since about the time of Shinran. And as Sensei mentioned, my brother is following the family plan as a reverend at SACBC and a professor at the Institute of Buddhist Studies. So I'm familiar with growing up with temple life. My day job is at the Director of Development for the BCA Endowment Foundation, and I'm a part of the efforts to ensure the future of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism in America through the Dharma Forward campaign. I was invited today to share with you about Eshinni and Kakushinni. The contributions of both Eshinni and Kakushinni have had a tremendous impact on Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. And Eshinni was unwavering in her support of Shinran Shonin and was dedicated to his belief in Amida's vow. They often get lumped together because what we know about Shinran Shonin comes from her writings. I must admit that I was once thought that it was just a really long name, but in fact, they are mother and daughter. So today, I'm going to focus on Kakushinni. She's a young woman who uses her letter writings to change the world. Kakushinni established the foundation and center from which to share her father's teachings. Kakushinni is actually the one that takes care of her father in his last years, and after Shinran Shonin dies, she begins efforts to honor his memory. She writes letters to her mother, and these are found way later in the 1920s, just a mere 100 years ago. And from them, we get to see that Shinran is a real person. Thanks to these writings, we get a glance into a more complete picture of him. She writes, but she also sets up a system of caretakers for his ashes. She also declares that the disciples of Shinran Shonin own the land of the Honganji, but also where his ashes were placed, and you can visit it today, the Otani Mausoleum or Honbyo. You can, of course, have a funeral there, but did you know that you can also get married there too? Enzukuri, creating connections. I had the pleasure of attending my brother's wedding there many years ago. It's a beautiful place indeed, as most places are in Kyoto. They hold services every morning, which is the way that the most Buddhists practice in Japan. What we know of getting up to come to Dharma school on Sunday is a tradition that we have here in the United States. If we go to the main Honganji building today, there is a hotel right next door called the Monpo Kaikan, and you can hear the sounds of the bonsho, the giant bell, every morning for service at 6 a.m. When I was growing up, my dad had services every morning too. My aunts and uncles would do the same. If we were pressed for time on a road trip, not to fear, they would carry a small obutsudan and we would have service in the car. So can you imagine most families do regular karaoke in the car, right? Well, we did Juseige and then we did karaoke. My dad still starts his morning with omairi and rajio taiso, the Japanese exercise. It's surprisingly a great way to get the body going. So this decision by Kakushinni gives us this center from which to hear the teachings. It becomes a beacon to other countries and eventually makes its way to the United States. Founders Day for the BCA is September 1st of 1899, which establishes the Buddhist Churches of America, and that effort gets temples set up in different areas of the United States, from San Jose to Fresno to San Diego and across to the East in the Midwest and in New York and more, which ultimately connects tens of thousands of Jodo Shinshu followers across the United States and the globe, each one carrying the torch and sharing the Dharma that brings us together. As a younger person for her time, Kakushinni used letter writing to change her world by creating connections. Today, kids use social media to influence their world. And to what end are we trying to influence? Through this chain of transmission, we have been able to receive the Nembutsu. It's like hearing about an amazing game and sharing it with your friends, and then boom, it takes off and everyone you know is playing it. Except that this happened well before social media, the internet, television, the phone, literally with a brush and paper. The teachings were considered revolutionary at the time, and over time were recognized as important enough to share for thousands of years. The methods for sharing differed, but the Dharma never wavers. Today, what are our modes of communication? Are you good at playing games? Well, why not make one? Are you good at watching and admiring TikToks? Well, why not do a challenge and start a hashtag? If you're scrolling endlessly on Instagram, like I often do, what about sharing images of the gratitude you see in your life each day? What if you took small actions? Each of our little steps, something that may seem like an everyday action, might have a tremendous impact in your future. Perhaps there is a difference between change and impact. Adapting the methodology for the time and place to the time and needs of each era. Church isn't something that you just do on Sunday and at festival time because your parents tell you to, right? Well, maybe the physical going to church might be, but the reason why you're at church, to hear the teachings of Amida, are not bound by the four walls. This is just the best place to have the opportunity to hear and connect, because you have reverends and Dharma friends and a reason to listen. But if you open your hearts and mind, Dharma is really everywhere. You can learn a lesson from almost anything. And just like Kakushinni did, your impact might be felt for generations to come. You can make an impact like she did. You can do your part and hold the spirit of Eshinni and Kakushinni represented in their generation, which were women of the Kamakura era who were confident, self-aware, and who actively participated in the history of Jodo Shinshu. I can't wait to see what you come up with, so tag me. Thank you so much this morning. Please join me in Gassho. Namanda, namanda. Thank you very much, Dharma friends.
Thank you so much, Michiko. Really appreciate your message and the work that you do in sharing the Dharma. I think that idea of sharing moments of gratitude through Instagram. I'm not a very social media person, although I do email and sometimes I use my cell phone for text messaging, but not very. I used to do a lot more, but not so much anymore. But I love that idea of sharing moments of gratitude through Instagram, and your being here today, sharing your experiences about Eshinni and especially Kakushinni, and your experiences as a daughter in a minister's family that goes back nearly to the time of Shinran Shoni. Certainly deeply appreciated. Thank you very much for that. As we conclude this morning's service, will you please join in Gassho and Nembutsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much, everybody. Go to class. See you later. Bye.
Good morning. Welcome, BWA members, Sangha, and friends. My name is Sumi Tanabe. I am the BWA Religious Chair, and I am honored to chair this service today. Every year, we observe the memorial service for Eshinni, wife of Shinran, Kakushinni, his youngest daughter, and Lady Yoshiko Otani, grandmother of the current Gomonshu. We also honor those beloved BWA members who have passed away since the last memorial service. I will now read our deceased members. Tamako Kubota, Setsuko Hane, Mitsue Kawaguchi, Chiyoko Ami, Carol Sato Nakashima, Masuko Hirano, Irene Uchiyama, Lillian Kanzaki, Sumiko Santo, and Satsuki Fujita. Karen Akimoto, our BWA president, will now offer incense on behalf of the families of the deceased. Thank you, Karen. Now, Rinban Sakamoto will lead us in Sambujo and Sambutsuge.
Dharma
Today, we have a guest speaker, Michiko Miyagi Inanaga. Michiko received her BA from UC San Diego with a double major in communication and Japanese studies. She has been a leader at the Orange County Buddhist Church, serving as a board member, Girl Scout troop leader, on many committees, including Long Range Planning Committee, Ministerial Scholarship Committee, Youth Department Committee, and Development Committee. She is the BCA Endowment Foundation Development Director. As a member of the Endowment Foundation, I feel we are very lucky to have Michiko as our Development Director. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Michiko Inanaga.
Please join me in Gassho. Women who remain in lay life should realize and never entertain the slightest doubt that those who, without any calculation, deeply rely on Amida Buddha single-mindedly and unwaveringly, entrusting themselves to the Buddha for their emancipation in the afterlife, will all be saved. Letters of Renyo. Namaste. Thank you so much, Sumi-san and to Rinban Sakamoto for inviting me here today to speak to the San Jose Betsuin BWA for the annual Eshinni Kakushinni Memorial Service. Thank you also to Mikame Sensei. It has been such a pleasure getting to know all of you. To tell you the truth, I was both honored and shocked to be asked to do my first Dharma talk. I initially thought that Rinban was calling to ask me for my parents' phone number so that they could speak. Being the daughter of two reverends, I'm used to fielding phone calls. But thanks to Sensei, San Jose Betsuin now has a very special place in my heart. On a separate note, it also just happens to be my mom's birthday today. So I wanted to take a moment to wish her a very happy birthday and memorialize here on YouTube that I am indeed her best, favorite, and only daughter. But I was actually asked here to talk about two other amazing women of our Jodo Shinshu tradition. You probably have heard the gist of Eshinni and Kakushinni story before, so I won't go into too much detail, but to say that without their letters, we might not have proof that Shinran was ever a real human being. There weren't a lot of historical references to Shinran Shonin's actual life before these writings. And during that time, there weren't a lot of historical records well preserved. But thanks to his wife and daughter, some 800 years later, we have proof that Shinran Shonin was a real person. His, at the time, revolutionary teaching taught that the primal vow of Amida Buddha embraced all. No one was excluded based on the class, gender, education, or other biases. There is very little evidence relative to their importance, but when I hear Eshinni and Kakushinni's story, I'm often amazed by three things. First, they were strong women. Second, Kakushinni basically built the foundation of the institution we call Honganji today. And third, this concept of who tells your story and its importance in establishing a legacy. When we think about feudal Japan, the role of women does not seem to be very powerful. Women are often treated like they are insignificant, and even today, the Emperor of Japan is required to be male. And yet, with that story, the story of Eshinni and Kakushinni is more interesting and powerful because in a male-dominated society, they were able to have enormous impact. Eshinni and Kakushinni were determined women. Eshinni spends her later years away from Shinnan-shonin. At 73, she leaves Kyoto, goes to Echigo to lead the community, responsible for her farmlands, her 2 orphaned grandchildren, servants, and their families, all by herself. It's a hard life in Echigo, and she struggles to keep herself and her dependents from starving. These circumstances ultimately prevented her from ever returning to Kyoto, but despite that, she never wavered in her belief in her husband and the Nembutsu. And Kakushinni's determination shows in how she honors her father, her ability to take care of her father as he ages, but also as a caretaker of his ashes. Part of what Kakushinni did was to make her father's resting place a place for the Sangha by bestowing the land to her father's disciples. Our temples are modeled this way too. We work hard to keep our temples standing and clean and safe and nurtured because we think of them as our places, our homes. She takes the opportunity to not only build the physical structure, but goes on to build the institution as well. With her determination, we have a physical home for our spiritual needs. In a sense, she created each of our spiritual homes as well with her decision that affects us today. So what does your spiritual home really mean? Bishop Harada tells a story about the monarch butterfly. He's tied it to the Dharma Forward campaign that the BCA and the IBS have joined forces to fulfill. In this imagery, the monarch butterfly leaves Mexico to migrate north, sometimes all the way to Vancouver, and then returns home to Mexico, sometimes to the exact same tree. And in this time frame, the monarch that returns is 4 generations younger, meaning that the butterfly that has returned has never been to that spot on the tree before. The tree is thousands of miles away. There is absolutely no coincidence. And yet, because of her ancestors, she has a home to return to. How does she know where to go? The butterfly is drawn in by something greater than herself. Something is being passed from one generation of butterflies to another. Clearly, the location of this tree, which is their home, is somehow being transmitted from this one butterfly to this other butterfly in the same family 4 generations later. My brother is a reverend, currently at SACBC, and he often says that knowing Amita's wisdom and compassion are like having a hotel reservation when you travel. So imagine having to travel without one. When I was little, my dad would do that. We sometimes would pack our bags, get in the car, and he would say, okay, guys, north or south? We didn't have a pool, so maybe, living in Utah, so I think we traveled in pursuit of one. It was pretty fun back then, but my type A personality cannot handle that today. It's far too much anxiety. It might be fun occasionally, but ultimately, I would want the assurance of expectation. Can you really enjoy your day on vacation if you don't know where you're going to sleep? How much of a difference does it make during the day when you're worried about where you're going to stay that night? When you have that reservation, you can focus on your vacation day's activities and experience it to the fullest. This reassurance, this support of knowing where you are headed is knowing great compassion. You almost take it for granted. But having that confirmation number means that I don't have to waste my precious vacation time worrying about something that I could have controlled with planning. That butterfly doesn't worry what to do next. She knows where her home is because that is being transmitted to her. Kakushinni built the physical home, but more importantly, it has become the spiritual home that we all have today. And we can all travel knowing that we spiritually have a place to stay. Lastly, this concept of who tells your story is one that really always inspires me when Eshinni and Kakushinni are mentioned. To me, there is a great parallel to one of my favorite musicals, Hamilton. How many of you have seen that musical? It's amazing, right? Especially if you have been lucky enough to see it live. So what happens to Hamilton? A brief synopsis is he builds the banking system as we know it today, and then spoiler alert, he lets his ego get to him and he dies in a duel with A. Burr. His wife, Eliza, is left to tell his story. It's a good thing they reconciled before his death because she builds his legacy by interviewing all of the soldiers that fought by his side. She tries to make sense of thousands of pages of writing that he leaves. She speaks out against slavery. She establishes the first private orphanage in New York City because Hamilton was essentially an orphan. And she lives another 50 years to tell his story. Hamilton, the great writer and leader, if you believe the musical, ironically was made greater and lives on longer through the efforts of his wife, arguably having a greater impact after his death. Of course, as he lived, he did all of those things. Of course, he fought for his legacy while alive, but ultimately, Eliza is the one that delivers that legacy. Throughout history, women have had an important role, to the point where there is an adage, behind every great man is an even greater woman. Okay, maybe I made that part up about even greater, but it was definitely a woman who tells the story. We don't often end up telling our own stories. We work hard to be successful, whether that means in power, money, assets, or love. We want to be great. We want to make our stories amazing, and yet how you are remembered is often left to those around us. We work hard to build our stories, and yes, of course we have a lot to say in that. But do we write our own obituaries? It's the people we choose to be in our lives that makes the best difference. Who lives? Who dies? Who tells your story? Sangha is an important piece of our Dharma journey as we share the Dharma with others. It is through these influences that we can fully participate in understanding the strengths and fragility of life. They are a part of how your story gets told. Without Eshinni and Kakushinni's critical piece of the puzzle, Shinran words and insights may never have reached us. Because Eshinni and Kakushinni believed in him and wrote the letters, we get a glimpse into the person. Because Kakushinni decided to enshrine his ashes, we have the Honganji and the structure in place to continue sharing Amida's wisdom and compassion. Because early followers respected his path for over 800 years, we have Jodo Shinshu Buddhism today. Because Honganji existed, we are able to have this amazing San Jose Betsuin, and with each critical generation afterwards sharing the story, taking us to tomorrow. At first, when Rinban asked me to speak, I was initially really hesitant to do this because I am not a minister, and what have I got to say, right? But what I came to realize is that I have a responsibility to share the story, much like Eshinni and Kakushinni did, and to help others find their spiritual home like I found mine. So I would encourage each of you to share this story, this tradition, and the great compassion with others. For like the butterfly, there is a spot on the tree for each of us. And how do we ensure that we continue to share it for our next 4 generations? We are grateful for the women in our lives. We are grateful for Shinran Shonin, who shared and initiated this message. And we are equally appreciative to Eshinni and Kakushinni for telling the story and allowing us to continue this tradition. For without them, our lives would be vastly different. We cannot count the immeasurable causes and conditions that bring us to the here and now. Thank you so much for having me here today. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda.
And now I would like to call upon Karen Akimoto for acknowledgements.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for the service this morning. And a special thank you to Michiko. We appreciate that you gave your debut Dharma talk to us. We feel very special, so thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your stories about strong women in Hamilton. I never really thought about Eliza and comparing her to Kakushinni, so that was, very enlightening. And story about the butterflies and your family travels. So thank you very much, and we hope that one of these days you'll join us in person for your Dharma talk. So I would also like to thank Rinban Sakamoto, Sumi Tanabe for chairing the service, and to Janice Doi and Kevin Kitagawa for doing the tech support today. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Karen. Recently, I was in the church office and I found this box full of books. And so I was curious and I opened it, and it was a book by Lady Yoshiko Otani titled The Life of Eshinni. It was translated by Dr. Taitetsu Uno and published in the 1970s, so that was a long time ago. I'm surprised it took me this long to read that book. Lady Otani traveled extensively abroad and visited North and South America, Europe, and Southeast Asia more than 50 times. In her book on Eshinni, she traces Eshinni's life by visiting all those areas. When I was a child, her husband, the Gamonshu, we called him Lord Abbot Otani at that time, came to the United States and visited the BCA temples, and so he came to Fresno, and I, along with many, many hundreds of children, received our Buddhist name. I listened to Lady Otano speak that day, and even though she spoke in Japanese, she was easy to understand. She was a great speaker. By having this memorial service, we will continue to honor Eshinni, Kakushinni, Lady Otani, and other remarkable women in the Jodo Shinshu tradition. Again, thank you to our speaker, Michiko, to Rinban Sakamoto, Karen Akimoto, Barbara Sasaki, Diane Fujioka, and our technician, again, Kevin and Janice, who participated in today's service. Are there any announcements? Do you have any, Karen? Rinban? Then I will ask Rinban to lead us in closing Gassho.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this morning's service. As we conclude, will you please join in Gassho and Nembutsu? Namo Amida Butsu.
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 As we bring the service to a close, I think we have Ondokusan. Is that right? Oh, okay. So the Betsuin choir will close with the Gata Ondokusan. Again, thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you next week. Apparently, there will be an 11 o'clock Japanese language service today. It's the second Sunday of every month that we kind of initiated this program. So if you're able to, if you would like to have that opportunity, anyway, at 11 o'clock, we'll continue with our morning services with Japanese language service. Michiko, thank you very much for joining us. I wish we could talk more in between our services, but because it's all streamed live, there's very little opportunity for us to kind of talk about things. But whatever, so because it's being streamed live, whatever conversations we have on the Zoom call will go straight out to YouTube. But again, thank you so much for joining us for this morning's service. We'll talk at another time. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Karen, that was a good acknowledgement you did on Michiko. Yeah. You know, her father.
And then it was like, my pen ran out of ink.
You think you're gonna remember, huh?
Yeah.
And then we
get up there and it's like,
what was it that he said? Her father, her father was a member of my committee, BWA committee that I chaired. He's really a very funny man. So one day he said, Sydney, he said, you're from Fresno, huh? I said, yeah, I'm from Fallon, but yeah, Fresno, Betsuin. Why? He said, well, I was assigned there. He said, my wife wants to divorce me because she just want to go to Fresno. It's so hot. He only lasted like 2 years, I think. It was a short time. But I didn't know about his daughter. They were very, very. Good job. Lights are still on. There's over.
こんにちは。今日の日本語のお参りを始めさせてもらいます。ちょっとこの PA のちょっと待ってください。すみません。じゃあ、今日のお参りを始めさせてもらいます。先にどうぞ、三部上、じゅうせいげをいただきましょう。じゅうせいげはいつもお参りの時に読みますけれど、このじゅうせいげの大無量寿経からの中に書いてあるお経です。お経ではなくて、これは本当ガータと思いますですけど、これ、向島先生も長い、だいぶ前のことですけど、話してましたので、その時に、私の質問は、この十世芸は、お経かガータですかと聞いたんですね。それ、やっぱりお経から来たものですから、お経と考えればいいと思う。でも、十世芸と言いますね。それ芸は、ガータですね。ガータ。そう、大無量寿経、その大無量のお経の中に書いてあるガータ。これもこれにも考えてもいいと思いますけれど、これは法蔵菩薩、ロケシュワラナージャ、忘れた、日本語の、なんだか、ロケシュワラナージャは、政治財、大武将の前ですね。法蔵菩薩が政治財、大武将の前に立って、これを必ずすることです。これが本願になります。法蔵菩薩がみんな必ず救われて、必ず浄土に回らせてもらうのが、これは法蔵菩薩の願ですね。この十世芸の中に、これが、これは法蔵菩薩のする気持ちです。今日のお参りは先に三部上をいただいて十世芸一緒に読みましょう。 Say 次にどうぞ一緒に三帰依文をいただきましょう。人参受けがたし、今すでに行く。仏法聞きがたし、今すでに聞く。この御根性に向かってどせずんば、さらにいずれの章に向かってか、この身をどせん。大衆もろともに指針に参謀に帰依し立てまつるべし。自ら仏に帰依し立てまつる。まさに願わくは主情とともに大道を体現して無常意を起こさん。自ら法に帰依し立てまつる。まさに願わくは主情とともに深く教蔵に入りて知恵のごとくならん。自ら僧に帰依し立てまつる。まさに願わくは主情とともに大衆を通りして一切無下ならん。無常人人未明の法は百千万号にも相合うことがたし、我今検問し受事すること得たり、願わくは如来の真実義を消し立てまつらん。ナモ阿弥陀仏、ナモ阿弥陀仏、ナモ阿弥陀仏、ナモ阿弥陀仏。今日の読んだジュセイゲはまたいつもお参りの時にいただきます。このジュセイゲの中に一つ書いてあることは、この同い字の上に書いてあるこの額に解放像と書いてありますね。その解放像はこのジュセイゲから書いたことです。その法蔵菩薩が政治財大御所の前に必ずみんな救われると、この解放像がこれは元のことだと思います。みんなのためにこの教えをこの集まっているところにそれを開けてみんなのために仏になることを全部渡します。そのみんなは私もそのみんなの中に入ってありますね。私もまあできないこともあるし、悪いこともした人です。いろんなそういうゴミかいろんなそういうものが私の心に溜まっています。こういうふうにみんなの前に立って偉いことを話してるんですけれど、これは形ですね。私の本当のことではない、聞いたこと、教えのことを聞いたことをまた口から出しています。でもこういうものも必ず浄土に回らせてもらって本当にありがたいことだと思います。浄土真宗の教えは仏教の教えと別ではないんですね。同じですよ。同じ教えです。これ言うのがおかしいかもしれないけれど、時々外の方から見ると浄土真宗は誰かに頼んでる教えです。自分ですることではない。これは仏教には私が行をして行でだんだん仏に なるように私がしなければならないんです。浄土真宗は他の何かに頼んで私が何にもしなくてもいい、何にもしなくても私もこのいいものをいただく、これは仏教ではないと時々聞きますけれど、でももし私が何かをすることがあったら、ね、できることできるんだったら、阿弥陀如来の願をあってもなかってもどうでもいいですね。自分でできるのに、私がそういう力があるから、その仏のことを私ができるんですね。自分でできます。できないものですから、阿弥陀如来の本が大事です。仏教は難しいするの教えではないんです。仏教の元はその難しいことを、難しい命のことをよくなる教えです。時々私的にはお参りでもね、お参りするときにこれ しなければならない、これしなければならない、その罰が当たるのように考えていると思います。これをしないと何かある。お参り、誰かの命日の大事な父さんの命日の時に、その命日の時にしなければならないと思うんですね。しないと何かが当たると思います、時々。でもそのしたいのは、その命日、またお参りの例えですけど、その命日の時にそのお参りをするのが私の気持ちですね。その大事さを考えておられます。でももし命日の時にしなかったら、仏教が罰が当たらないんですね。仏教の教えは、本当にその元の教えは安心の教えです。安心で生かさせてもらっている教えです。だからもし自分ができないことを分かったときに心配しなくてもいい。浄土真宗の中にもしその気がついた、私が本当にできないものです、どうするな、あちこちへ走り回ったら何にもない。教養真宗の中に書いてあることですけれど、私たちが走り回っている毛が火事に燃えているように走って回っています。あちこちにこれしなければ、もうこれしないとこれがある、そういうふうに私たちがしなくてもいい。その自分のどういうかな、煩悩、自分のことを分かったら、私が本当にあんまりいい人ではない。でもそれを分かれば、本当に分かれば、阿弥陀如来の願の大事さをいただいてもいいです。阿弥陀如来の本願をいただいてもいいです。また仏教の教えは難しくすること教えではない、安心する教えです。こういうものも必ず 浄土に参らせてもらうものです。このジュセイゲの中に、これは法蔵菩薩が自分の先生の前に政治罪と思います。またお経をあげる間に他のことを考えていましたけれど、政治罪だったかな。いつももうなおそのサンスクリットの名前も忘れた。もう本当に冒険だった。何でも覚えられない。最初に一緒に読んでいましたの、三帰依文。前にはこれを読んだときに、もう字もはっきり見えたんですね。今頃こういうふうにちょっとこれでもあんまりよく見えないんですけれど、少し思い出、少し読んで、さっきもう終わりましたんですけれど、もうその簿記に少し簿記になって、目も遠くなったし、耳も遠くなったし、家でテレビを見るときに、もうそのバリも全部上げて、みんな、もうトゥラウ、トゥラウ。でも私がこういうものが必ず阿弥陀如来の本願で助けてもらいます。政治罪か、政治罪オブシュと思いますけど、法蔵菩薩が政治罪オブシュの前に立って必ずみんなを助けてもらいます。法蔵菩薩が行をして勉強して、もう長いことと最後にもうそれ全部私たちのために作って阿弥陀如来になりました。阿弥陀如来が法蔵菩薩が阿弥陀如来になったから、そのがんをもう大丈夫。私たちも助けてもらいます。私もこういう拷問なものも助けてもらいます。これは浄土真宗のありがたいことだと思います。いつも念仏、南無阿弥陀仏を感謝の念仏と言いますね。それなぜはこのがんで私、この凡夫の者が助けてもらって、今生きている間に安心してもいいです。いい人、悪い人ももう誰でも助けてもらおうから安心してもいいです。今朝Adult English Service の時に、今朝のゲストスピーカーはMichiko Inanagaです。Michiko Inanagaはノボ宮地の娘ですね。その長いことそのミニスターの開教師の家の中に住んでて、その味わおうかな、その味さが心の中にもう自然に溜まっていますか。今朝美智子が一つの例えをこの浄土に生まらせてもらうのがちょうどホテルレザーベーションみたいですね。 ホテルレザベーション。そのもし、ヴィケーションでどっかに行くと、必ず先にレザベーション入れて、もしどっかに泊まるんだったら、レザベーションを入れて、でもレザベーションなかったら、ヴィケーションに行くと、今晩どこに泊まるかな、今晩何をしようか、レザベーションもないからどうしようか、そのホテルに行くまでわからないから、ちょっと気になるんですね。リラックスできない。でももしそのホテルレザベーションにもう決まったら、もう一日、今晩、もう心配ない。泊まるところありますから、もう安心して、一日、安心してエンジョイしてもいいです。同じように私たちがもう浄土、その仏になることはもう決まってるから、今の間にこのサムサラの中に、そのサハの中に住んでるけれど安心できます。安心して毎日生活の中に生かさせてもらって、本当に安心のことできます。念仏、南無阿弥陀仏は感謝の念仏と言います。本当にありがたいことだと思うんですね。もう決まってる。上田を回らせてもらって、私がもうこういう凡夫のものが助けてもらって、今、この中にいろんなことがある。まだいろんなことありますけれど、浄土に生まらせてもらうのが、これは決まってる。阿弥陀如来の本願で決まってる。今の間に、その時まで毎日生活の中に安心して生かさせてもらっておられます。その法蔵菩薩の願、その願で阿弥陀如来になった私がその願で助けてもらう。本当にありがたいことだと思います。今日の日本語のお参りをこれで終わらさせてもらいます。来月また三亀先生が帰ってきます。その時にどうぞ。これはいつもSecond Sunday のAdult English Service の後に日本語のお参りを今決まっていますから、どうぞ来月またこのお参りにどうぞ来てください。最後にどうぞ一緒に合唱念仏をお願いします。南無阿弥陀仏、南無阿弥陀仏、南無阿弥陀仏。ありがとう。12月5日にボディでサービスですね。その時にマイコー・エンド教師の先生がボディでの時に話、法話を聞きますから、その時にどうぞお参りしてください。じゃあこれで終わらさせてもらいます。じゃあまたありがとうございました。